Silent E is found at the ends of many words. Tonight, we're going to go look at common word patterns that end with silent E, focusing on words with CE, SE, and ZE ending patterns. I'll be explaining these patterns and then demonstrating some instructional activities that you can do to help your students practice these patterns for both reading and spelling. So early in the program, we teach the children the vowel consonant E pattern, where E is silent and jumps over one consonant to make the single vowel change its sound from a short to a long sound, as in the words case, froze, these, and spruce. But silent E can show up at the ends of words that are not vowel consonant E patterns. We often see them at the ends of words with vowel teams and bossy R, like in the words grease, horse, snooze, verse, praise, and peace. Here, the silent E does not control the vowel team or bossy R because they are not single vowels. Why is there a silent E at the ends of these words? What is its job? Well, let's take a look at each of the patterns in this table and talk about the job of the silent E. Understanding the job of the silent E at the ends of words will help children to be able to read and spell these types of words correctly. In this column, each of these words ends with CE. Now notice that there are no vowel consonant E patterns here. For example, the word dance, the E can't jump over two consonants to change the sound of the short A. And for the words force, peace, and voice, the E cannot change the sounds of vowel teams or bossy R. So in these types of words, the job of the E is to make the C say its soft sound, as we learn when we tap the chart CI, CE, CY, city. In this column, each of these words on the left end with SE and either have the S or Z sound. Here, the E is added to distinguish it from a plural word. For example, goose and the plural word goose, moose and the plural word moose, tease and the plural word tease, and please and the plural word please. Now remember that most one-syllable base words do not end in a single S. We learned this with the floss rule, where we double the S at the end. But these words are not floss words because they have vowel teams. We add an E to these words after the S, so they are not mistaken for a plural word. We see this pattern in a lot of single-syllable words with vowel teams. For words that end in ZE, we also add an E because one-syllable base words don't end in a single Z. So when we hear words with the sounds Z or S at the end, and they don't follow the floss word or floss rule, we add an E to the end of them. So let's take a look at where we start to see some of these silent E patterns in the brain-friendly reading curriculum. They show up starting with the EE vowel team lesson on page 134, and then subsequently throughout the vowel team and bossy R lessons. And you can see them in the little sections on the lesson page. They're grouped together. When you have children mark and read these words, it is important to point out the ending and explain why that silent E is there. You could plan a separate lesson to explicitly teach SE and ZE endings and pull these words from these pages to do a word study activity and a spelling game, which I'll be demonstrating at the end. And if you want to find more words that fit the pattern for your lesson and word study activities, you can simply Google it like I did here for, let's say, 5-letter words that end in ZE. Here's the list, and I can choose the words that I want to include in my lesson. Thefreedictionary.com is another resource that lets you search for words or word lists based on word parts. Merriam-Webster.com/word finder lets you look for words of different lengths with different skills. These are all free resources at your fingertips. Instructional strategies and activities that you can do with your students to help them see the patterns and give them the repeated practice with the skill include having the student highlight or mark the pattern on a lesson page or handwritten list, or you can prepare a game card page and have the student mark and highlight the pattern. And that would look like that. You could also do a word sorting activity where you write the words onto cards, mark the pattern, and sort the words by the ending sound. In this example, it's the ending sound of Z. Does it say Z or does it say S? And then you can dictate 5 or 6 words to spell from those same cards after sorting those cards. You could also make game cards and play tic tac toe, bingo, or battle cry. All of these activities and directions are found at the end of the Trading Companion Guide. And the tic tac toe and bingo games are more of a spelling focus, and battle cry is more of a reading focus. So I'm now going to demonstrate marking the skill, followed by a couple of games that you can play. What I've done here is I've just taken a piece of paper and I folded it into, so I have 16 squares. And I've chosen words from a previous skill that I've taught. So I have O moon oo and teeth e words. And this focus is going to be on the ending sounds of ze and se. Sometimes we know ze says z, but se can say 2 sounds. It could say s or z. So for marking the skill, I might have the student just go through and let's find all of the words that end in ze, and we're going to highlight and say that sound z, and they can go through z, z, find all the ze, z, z, just like we would do with the other skills. Highlight and say the sound z, z, and so on until we get all the ze. There's one z at the end. Then they can go back and read those words: ooze, snooze, sneeze, breeze, and so on. And then I might say, okay, let's find the SE words. We know from our chart that S can say S like sun, right? And S can say Z like rose when it's at the end. We're going to try each sound and see which one makes a word. So let's try the S like sun first. They might highlight that and say S, choose. Does that sound like a word? Let's try the other sound. Z, choose. Yes, that's a word. Choose. And they may do the same here. Is it cheese or cheese? Cheese is a word. Yes, I know it's cheese. They may also, because these both have a Z sound, just like we do when there's heart words, right? They may put a little Z there to help them remember that S is making the Z sound. That S sounds like a Z, right? The next one, is it moose? That sounds like a word, or moose. That's moose. So that one is saying that S sound. Is it goose or goose? Goose. And so on. They can go through and mark the rest of those words. Then we're going to play a reading game first. It's called Battle Cry. It's great for words that have similar patterns. You can shuffle these cards, and you usually play with 2 people. You're going to deal the cards out so evenly. So everyone has the same amount. That's why I have 16 cards here. And what you do is you're going to look for the same pattern. We're talking about that S or Z sound. So these words have to match with either the S or the Z sound. So player 1 is going to turn over a card. This is player 1's turn. And they're going to read their word snooze, and they're going to ask their partner to turn over a card too. And then that player 1 is going to read both words. Snooze, cheese. Do they have the same ending sound? Yes, they have the same ending sound. So player 1 gets to keep those cards. They have a match. Now it's player 2's turn. They're going to turn over a card, tweeze, and they'll ask their partner to turn over a card. Player 2 is going to read these words. Ruse. That's right. We talked about ruse and what that means. Tweeze and ruse. Do they have the same ending sounds? Yes. This is a reading focus. We're thinking about the sounds, right? And then player 1 will go again. They'll turn over a card. They'll read it. Goose. They'll ask their partner to turn over a card and read it. Freeze, goose, and freeze. Are those the same ending sounds? Nope, they're not. They're going to go in a discard pile over somewhere. And you keep playing. And then, of course, you're going to go through all the cards, and then you can count how many matches you have. That's called battle cry or war. And it's the directions, again, are at the end of the Trading Companion Guide. And it's a nice, quick game, and it's a great game for reading. After that, you could take those same cards that you just played with, and you could play tic-tac-toe. Tic-tac-toe, if you are working with a large group, if you're in a classroom, or if you're working in a small group and they have their own tic-tac-toe board, and the teacher could just take these cards and they could call off the words, right? So the teacher would dictate the first word, freeze, and the partners decide whose X's and O's, and the X's maybe start first, and they would put it on their arm, freeze. They would write their word, E, and then the Z part they have to remember, is it a Z-E or an S-E? Oh yeah, most of these words, Z-E says Z. There's just a couple of them where an S-E says Z. They would put their O there. So in a large group or a small group, the teacher could dictate. If you're working as a tutor and you're playing this with your student, like I do a lot, then you would take turns reading the card. If my student was an X, then I would read the card, snooze. They're not going to look at that word, and they're going to arm spell and write it sn. And let's say they're going to put it right here, maybe sn, ooh, z. And they would put their X, and then they would draw the next card to read to me for me to spell. And that way they're getting that reading practice and spelling practice at the same time. And then they would read the next moose, ooh, s. And then I would ooh, s. That one has a S, so it's got to be S-E. And you would continue playing like that. So those are just a couple of activities that you can do for those ending E's. Spelling is where the kids have the most difficulty. Remembering that E to put at the end, and then knowing if it's an S or a Z.